So in this next video, we're going to explore the process of taking that applicant and that we did in the last video who became a registrant, and we're going to go through the process of doing a renewal for them. So let's flip back to the Registrant Explorer. We've still got Harold Henderson. He's got his active practicing registration. So now what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and generate a single renewal for Harold. Normally what you would do is choose, when it's renewal time, you choose generate all renewals. And what Alinity will do is do a search in the system for all registrants who meet the criteria for a new renewal, essentially that they have a current active practicing renewal. But in this case, we want to just do it for a single person. So we'll generate a renewal for the single person. We'll say, yes, we do want to. And it's going to ask us what year. In this case, we'll choose, we want to renew for 2012. So we'll say, OK. So now when we open and close the registrations node, we'll see that we have our current active practicing registration, but we now have a new pending active practicing registration. So that's the pending registration that the member would do online. So before we go to the web client, we need to grab their user login and their password. Now you notice their user login is different than it was before they were a registrant. That's because now this registrant has been assigned a registration number, not just a stakeholder number, but now that they're an active practicing registrant, they've actually got a registration number. That's the user login that they use. Now you'll see that they have an extra item that they can click on here, and that's for renewal. So we click renewal, and now the interface is a little bit different. So the first tab that we have is just a standard welcome screen, and the CPSBC would choose the text that needs to go on this. It's essentially just instructional text. So we say next. So the next step is a profile update. Now this profile update allows the member to make sure that their current contact and competence information is all up to date. So we'll skip the personal contact information and address, but you'll see that we can also start to do things like add registrations in other jurisdictions that I might have. So say for instance, I'm also a regulated acupuncturist in British Columbia. We can save that, and that way during the renewal process, the college has the option of inquiring with those other jurisdictions to see if there's any conduct issues or things like that. We have the option of adding education. So now in the confirmation tab, this would allow me to change my the registration that I'm going to. Now from an active, I can either go to associate or inactive in this system, but the college would be able to determine other changes that are allowable. And that's driven by the registration type setup that we looked at earlier. So we'll say next, we're going to go ahead and renew to active. And now in the declarations tab, I can start filling out some of my more particular information. So the number of practice hours that I had last year. If we have a competence program for this system, then you'd be able to fill in your competence information. So in this case, we'll go ahead and do that because these are mandatory in this system. This uses the reflective model of competence where we choose learning objectives and then report the next year on whether or not they were met. So we indicate whether or not we have completed the continuing competence objectives for 2010. So we either say yes or no, and if we answer no, then we have to explain why. So we'll say yes in this case. And then we say, are all the active licenses you possess to practice in other jurisdictions in good standing? We have to say yes to that. And then we have, for instance, criminal offense declarations that we say, no, we don't have any criminal charges pending. And these declarations are really custom to each college. You'll have specific declarations that make sense for the requirements of the profession. We do our main declaration and say submit. Okay, and so now we're on the payment tab. So in this case, we can pay by credit card. So we'll say it's Jeff Burns, and we use a test credit card number, and process the transaction. And we have the payment confirmation, so that the member can actually print this receipt, and that of course is emailed to them. They can, when they click complete renewal, then we're done. So following this process, now it's now the registrant is done with their portion. Back in the Alinity Smart Client, if we reopen, we can see still that there's an active pending registration. The deficiencies have all been cleared except for letter of eligibility, and that's just a deficiency that's been added that doesn't get automatically cleared by the web. And that's, in this case, perhaps we just say that that's not necessary. Save it. And so now all the deficiencies are either cleared or canceled. You'll see we have a payment registered from that online payment transaction. And once again, take a look at that payment batch like we did last time. And now we have that in a credit card payment batch. So if we look, we see we have a check batch that was from the original application and a credit card batch that happens to be from this application. So on the registration, we're not quite done with that registration yet, because there's still the approval process. So essentially, a human set of eyes has to come in, take a look at the registration, make sure that everything is all good and well, and then we can just go ahead and approve the registration. We say OK, and now it's approved. So the last step that the college might go through then would actually be to print a practice permit. Now we can print practice permits in bulk, but in this case we'll just say select on, and we have a practice permit. So that's the process of doing an online renewal. Thanks.